All right, children, we are back. So Tony Robbins, Unshakable, your your financial freedom playbook, creating peace of mind in a world of volatility. You can say that again. No, so it's funny we talk about the volatility, but mainly speaking of the market, the stock market, but it's actually been one of the most stable markets we've ever experienced. So um, interesting though, but he brings up a lot of big points that I think are extremely important to your financial future. I know too many people that are not invested at all or very weak, very weak investments. Not very much of their income goes to future investments, and it's all because of kind of fear, I think. A lot of us were taken out by the 2008 crash, right? I've spoken of my experience many times as a young, my early 20s, and I had tens of thousands of dollars that just went down the drain, and I never saw it again, So it was a huge hit to me, and I think I'm, far from the only one that experienced something like that. And so a lot of people have really just maintained a sort of a fear of the market. But as Tony Robbins says in this book, the only way to win is to get in and stay in. And so a lot of the issues that caused people to have to sell. Now 2008 was bigger than normal, right? Typically we talk about you need to be in a position where you don't have to sell, you don't have to get out when things go south. Well, in 2008 it maybe went too far south and people were literally like losing their jobs for extended periods of time and things like that, and so people had to sell at the wrong time. But for the most part, Tony talks about that we have a recession every 3 to 5 years on average, but it recovers within a year or two and goes higher than before. And that's been the pattern for like almost 100 years basically. It's just like that's been the historical pattern for a third of America's history. So it's a pretty safe bet to continue betting on America. In fact, Warren Buffett, I think it might be in this book, I can't remember. Yeah, it's in this book. Warren Buffett says, he said, for 115 years or whatever, America has been, essentially outperforming every market in the world, and now is no time to bet against it, right? The entrepreneurial spirit is alive and thriving in America, and that this is the place to invest your money, right? So he basically, investors make up a large percentage of the wealthiest people in the world, and they make their money because they put any money they have into places that will make them more money. So as the richest man in Babylon talks about, putting your coins to work for you so that they can make more coins, right? To get started in this one, Tony, let's see, he says, right out of the gate, you've heard me talk about this a lot. He says, by taking to heart the truth that emotions are enemy number one when it comes to investing, you have to drill that in and know that like when it comes to investing, your mind and logic have to be superior to your emotional reaction when you see your money disappear. And he talks it out in detail about that the pain of losing your money is so much more significant than the positive feeling of seeing your money grow, that people literally do the wrong thing at the exact wrong time because of an emotional response. So you have to get that in your head. Like, even though it feels bad now, historically it'll come back, and you'll do better if you can just outlast the downturns. Another thing, at least once a year, he says, the market has a 10% correction. Like once a year, the market gets a little out of hand, tanks 10%. But when you average it out, it still goes up rather than an average of down. So you got to be prepared to take these like one day hits where all of a sudden you were making money and all of a sudden it's all gone in one day. over time it comes back and it gets up there and it goes beyond what it was, and we continue to have a near 10% average return. So you gotta just know these things and be armed with the fact that, like, okay, it's going to happen. I'm gonna stay in and I'm gonna let my money grow over time. Both Warren and David have said time and again that index funds are the best way for investors to maximize their chances of investment success. Index funds are simple. Rather than try to time the market or outguess other professional money managers about the prospects of individual stocks, index funds simply buy and hold all of the stocks in a broad market index such as the S&P 500. Index funds work by preparing the cost of investing to the bare bones minimum. They pay no fees to expensive money managers, have minimal trading costs as they follow the ultimate buy and hold strategy. We can't control what the markets will do, but we can control how much we pay for our investments. Index funds allow you to invest at minimal cost in a portfolio diversified to the nth degree. Sometimes you can get into index funds for as little as like 0.05%, interest or service fee or whatever it is. And so that is super small. And he goes into detail about all. The thing that I liked most about this book, as someone who's been investing for a long time, is he sheds tons of light on all the kind of the garbage in the financial industry, right? Just like any industry, if there's big money in it, people will find a way to get a piece, right? And so where we have just literally trillions and trillions of dollars in the investment industry coming from businesses and individuals and insurance companies and medical care, and like just there's so much money in financial management that people figure out ways to get a piece, right? I'll manage your money for this fee. Let me show you how great I am. And so he goes through, mutual funds and IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and all these things, and talks about the fees, the taxes, the trading fees, the management fees, all these things that reduce your returns. And one thing that I didn't fully realize is that a lot of mutual funds are created by money financial managers or whatever, and what they'll do is create 50 mutual funds. Everyone has a slightly different selection of stocks, and when one of the 50 outperforms the market, say the market went up 10% this year and this mutual fund went up 15%, well then they sell that, not telling you that they had 49 others that weren't that good, and say, look at our ability to pick stocks. This is what we can do for you, yada, yada, yada. Just pay us, 2%, 3%, whatever, and we will manage your money. Well, then they do the same thing the next year, but they're not necessarily putting your money in the best investments, and they, because there's no guarantees and things like that, but you're still paying them 2%, which if you break down the numbers of 2% over, 20, 30, 40 years, that turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars, which can be extremely important for, your average Joe retirement. So I'm happy to tell you that if you have 100,000 or more in investable assets, his company will provide a complimentary review. This is creative planning. I highly recommend you go check out his company, Creative Planning, at getasecondopinion.com. It's all one word and I can't break it up. Let's see, why did I highlight this one? Hedge funds versus mutual funds. For those unfamiliar, a hedge fund is a private fund available only to high net worth investors. The managers have complete flexibility to bet on both directions of the market, up or down. They charge hefty management fees, typically 2%, and share the profits. Typically 20% of profits go to the manager. A mutual fund is a public fund available to anyone. In most cases, they're actively managed by a team who assembles a portfolio of stocks, bonds, or other assets and continually trades their holdings in hopes to beat the market. An index fund is also a public fund but requires no active managers. He says there are 40,000 stocks to choose from in the world today, including 3,700 various U.S. stocks. And by the end of 2015, there were more than 9,500 mutual funds in America alone, which means there are far more funds here than stocks. So see, these mutual fund managers have created, like, how many was that? 9,500 mutual funds in America alone, and there's only 3,700 U.S. stocks. So they, like, how is it that everyone is beating the market, right? It's not possible. So basically, if you'll take Warren Buffett's advice and Ray Dalio's and Tony Robbins' advice, you basically just buy index funds and hold them long term, and just let, just get the market average. You're not trying to beat the market. You're just trying to be in on the market, which continually goes up. When a person with experience meets a person with money, the person with experience ends up with the money, and the person with money ends up with an experience. And that's the truth. If you spend time in any industry, you'll become good at it. And if your industry is to tell people who have a little bit of money and want to invest it but don't know much about investing, if your job is to tell them how you'll manage their money and make them more money, you'll get good at it and end up making more money than them. And so don't forget that they are in it for the money. Emotions get a hold of us, and we as investors tend to do very stupid things. For example, we tend to put money into a market and take it out at exactly the wrong time. So what's the solution to that? You just buy on a regular basis a certain amount of your paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, and you hold it. That's the solution. So if the market's down, you buy. If it's medium, you buy. If it's high, you buy. And you just get the market average and gain the market average over time, and you win. We all win. Warren Buffett said in another book, he said that the stock market is a method or platform or something to transfer money from the impatient to the patient. Now, he's a patient dude. He's been buying stocks for years and years and years, and he just holds them and holds them. And he's had Coca-Cola for like 40 years, and it turned into a multi-billion-dollar deal for him. If he would have sold it at, after he made $5-10 million bucks, he'd have been like, yes, I cashed out. And he'd have been still trading his money in all these other stocks. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola is still just cruising. He'd have missed out on all that extra, percentage and all that growth. And he wouldn't be the Warren Buffett we all know. It's simple, says Buffett. My wealth has come from a combination of living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest. That's how simple it is to get wealthy in America. And so if you're in a prosperous country like America or, many of the European countries and things, you can just get in the market, get the market average, and compound interest will make you wealthy. That's that's how hard it is. Let's illustrate the tremendous impact of compounding with just one simple but mind-blowing example. Pay attention to this. The numbers are crazy. Two friends, Joe and Bob, decide to invest $300 a month. Joe starts at age 19, keeps going for 8 years, then stops adding to his pot at age 27. In all, he's saved a total of $28,800. Joe's money then compounds at a rate of 10% a year, which is roughly the historic return of the U.S. stock market over the last century. By the time he retires at 65, how much does he have? The answer, $1,863,287. So he literally invested $28,000, but he did it by the age of 27. Never invested another penny. He just blew the rest of his money on everything he wanted. And in the end, by age 65, he nearly has $2 million, $1.8 million. In other words, that modest investment of $28,000 has grown to nearly $2 million. Pretty stunning. His friend Bob gets off to a slower start. He begins investing exactly the same amount, $300, but doesn't get started until age 27. Still, he's a disciplined guy, and he keeps investing $300 every month until he's 65. So he goes from 27 years old to 65, investing $300 a month, and for a period of 39 years. His money also compounds at 10%. The results, when he retires at 65, he's sitting on a nest egg of $1.5 million. $1,589,000. Let's think about this for a moment. Bob invested a total of $140,000, almost 5 times more than the 28 that Joe invested, yet Joe has ended up with an extra $273,554. So Joe ends up wealthier than Bob, and he invested a fraction of what Bob did because he gained compound interest, right? They both got 10%. They both put $300 a month in. One of them got a lot more compound interest over time than the other. So, moral of the story, get in, stay in for as long as you possibly can, and let your money work for you. Let your money make you rich. Pay yourself first by taking a percent of your income and having it deducted automatically from your paycheck or your bank account. This will build your freedom fund, the source of a lifetime income that will allow you to never have to work again. My guess is you're already doing this, but maybe it's time to give yourself a raise. Increase what you save from 10% to 15%, 15 to 20. Put as much as you possibly can and still, make your life work so that you can gain compound interest on as much money as possible, and pretty soon you won't ever have to worry about money again. The single best place to compound money over many years is the stock market. You heard it from Tony Robbins. The best place to earn compound your money is in the stock market. You'll hear people argue for a million different things, and it's not that they're wrong. It's just that almost everything is in the stock market. So I own real estate companies in the stock market, and they pay me a monthly dividend as if I was getting rent. But my total amount of money that it required for me to get in is tiny. It's as small as I want. I can find companies that cost $6, $7 per share. They pay me a monthly dividend in cash. It's as if I'm getting rent, but I don't have to take a loan out from the bank. I don't have an overwhelming payment to worry about. I just put the cash that I have available into the stock market, and I get a monthly payment. Now, you buy one share of a $6 stock and you get, a few cents a month or whatever. But the point is, you don't have to have a high entry fee. You can get in for a very small fee, right? Some people might argue other industries or whatever, but they're almost all in the stock market. So you can participate in every industry in the stock market. And so that's another point that he says, right? Get in the index fund, which basically means you own this broad spectrum of stocks, maybe 50 stocks that are top for performers, and you just hold them. So you're in all these industries. A good diversification of your finances, and you don't do a whole bunch of buying and selling, and you don't have high fees, you don't have trade fees, you don't have money manager fees, taxes are low. One thing, I don't know if you follow my Instagram, but I talked about my experience last year. So a lot of people don't think about that when you actualize a profit by selling it. See, if I buy a stock today, I bought it in 2018. And if I sell it in 2018 for a profit, that's going to go on this year's taxes. But if I buy it in 2018 and I don't sell it till I'm 80, then it doesn't go on my taxes until I'm 80. Okay? So just last year, 2017, I don't know if you saw that video, but I had a video where I made $10,000. Actually, it was more like 11.5, but I made $10,000 in one day. By 10 o'clock, I had made over 10 grand. It was a day trade that I saw a great opportunity, and I took advantage of it. I made all this money. Well, essentially that one trade disqualified me for certain tax breaks because I made too much money in capital gains, and therefore I don't qualify for your biggest tax advantages. So you gotta think about that. Like, it wasn't that I became rich, right? 10 grand was great, but it's not really life changing. Yet it disqualified me from tax breaks just because the rules are stupid. There's just rules in place. So if you make more than, I think it's like more than $5,000, you don't even have to make that much money in the stock market to disqualify you from certain tax credits. And so anyway, if I'd have just held on to the stock or whatever, it wouldn't have been on last year's taxes. I would have gotten my tax breaks and I would still own the stock. So get it? There's things to think about, you know. You don't want to get hit by taxes when it's not necessary. So just hold on to it. The biggest danger isn't a correction or a bear market. It's being out of the market, right? Don't be so afraid of your money going down, because guess what? It will. I can already tell you that. I can promise you it'll go down at some point. And it seems very likely, since it has for 100 years, it'll go back up. So just don't worry about it. Like it's not an actually scary thing. Like every time it crashes, people act like this is Armageddon. This is the last. And if you don't get your money out, you'll never see it again. And then every time it goes back up. He gives multiple stories of investors who became gajillionaires in 2008, 9, 10 because they prepped their investors and let them know, listen, we are way out from a recession and we are super due for a recession. So just prepare yourself. Your money will tank. It's going to be cut in half at some point. In fact, Warren Buffett threw a letter out to his shareholders within the Berkshire and Hathaway saying exactly that. Be prepared for your money to be cut in half at some point in the near future. They prepared their investors so when it did tank, their investors didn't bail. And what they did is took all the cash dividends and things that were coming in, put them in high-risk investments when in 2008 it was super low, and almost overnight they became billionaires because they didn't get afraid like most people did. He says core principle number 1, don't lose. You want to protect your downside. Protect your downside. That is so big. Let's see, instead they hunt for investment opportunities that offer what they call asymmetrical risk reward, a fancy way of saying that rewards should vastly outweigh the risk. In other words, these winning investors always seek to risk as little as possible to make as much as possible. That's the investor's equivalent of nirvana. So there's obviously some risk in investing. You don't want to risk too much. And you need to make sure that the reward is definitely better than the risk. And that would be an index fund. There's a little bit of risk. You might put all your money in and we end up in a Great Depression and we're not going to get our money back for 30 years. It could happen, and it has once, right? But only once. A couple more principles. He says core principle 3, tax efficiency. I already kind of talked about that, but taxes matter a lot. A lot. Principle 4, diversification. Typically, not all markets drop at the same time. So if you're diversified, maybe, the real estate market goes down, but, precious metals go up. Or, there's dozens of markets, or there's really about seven or eight key markets, but there's multiple. You can really fraction each one down. But major markets don't typically drop at the same time. So if one does, you're in both. So you remain semi-balanced over time. And so one thing to maybe note is there's true economic growth and improvement, and then there's inflation and recession over top of that, right? So for example, if I personally, in my personal life, I work, I buy a house, well, I don't own the whole house until I pay it off at the bank, right? So I'm still just making my payments and I'm chipping away at how much of this house I actually own. Plus the value of the home is going up over time. And so there's a certain amount of true asset collection by me. Now this is also production, right? What things am I producing? Well, we literally are finding more precious metals from the earth, and we're literally pulling energy from the earth and the sun and the wind, and we convert that into more applicable resources for people to use and buy and consume, etc. So there's a true value of economic growth, right? And then there's inflation, which is caused from credit, which is usually a good thing. If you have easy access to credit, people will take advantage of that. They buy more, they spend more, they acquire more, etc. But it gets out of hand. So there's the true growth, and then there's the inflated credit growth. But at some point you have to pay your credit back. So then people tighten the belts, and we get these recessions, make dip below what the actual growth was, and people go, "Hey, our investments are below what their true value is. We should buy." And also the creditors go, "Man, we're in a good spot now. We should cheapen the credit," right? The Fed lowers the interest rate or whatever, and all of a sudden we reverse that. So we get this big up and down swing of inflation and deflation on top of actual growth. So diversification sort of helps you just capture that real growth, and without tanking at any one given moment. And at the same time, it helps you sort of weather the storms, because they happen in every industry at different times. Buy and hold is still the winner. I'm not going to do that one. Anyway, I think I'm done reading quotes, but the last section of this book I actually absolutely loved, and it is not about money. He says real wealth. That's chapter 9, real wealth. Every day think as you wake up, today I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. That's by the Dalai Lama. And he essentially goes into like your awareness of life, appreciating your blessings. If you're like me, you were born in America to a good family and a healthy body. And I mean, that alone, by some random stroke of luck, I have more than I deserve by 1 trillion times. And to recognize how fortunate we really are, and that relationships are what matter, and health, and the ability to continue to chase dreams, things like that. That's true wealth. Just today, I got word of a tragedy in our neighborhood. So last night, my family was out on a walk together, which we love to do. We just really try to prioritize family time, and we're out. We went and cleaned our local church building, and we just decided to walk to and from. And on our way home, we hear the sirens of ambulances and fire trucks. And right previous to that, my wife just was like, "I got a sick feeling and I don't know what it is," right? And then immediately we hear ambulances and stuff, and we're just like, I hope everything's okay. Well, it turns out it's not okay. And one of our friends and neighbors that lives just a few houses away lost their 12-year-old son. He was hit by a big, I don't know what kind of truck, but I think a construction type truck, and was immediately killed. And I haven't been able to quit crying all day. I keep thinking of him. But things like that really bring into perspective what matters in life and what real wealth is. And a whole bunch of money doesn't change something like that, right? A whole bunch of money won't make your relationship with that loved one, that whoever it is in your life, it won't get better because you have money. So enjoy money, make money so that you have certain securities and abilities. Money can definitely help you have some cool, interesting experiences with the people you love, but it's not going to make your relationships super strong in addition to whatever you can do without money. Can definitely facilitate some things, but not everything. So what is true wealth? Recognition of your blessings and good relationships, the ability to chase dreams, health, focus on everything. Don't just think about money. But so if you know Tony Robbins, he's very into self-help in every way, and he's a he's a self-made billionaire with several different companies and 7 different industries, and I think it's like 35 different companies across 7 industries, and he's just an extremely successful self-made man. And a lot of the advice in this book he took from interviews with people like Ray Dalio and Warren Buffett and a whole bunch of other super successful investors and market managers and bankers and things like that. So it's not all just his advice, even though just getting his advice would be excellent. He got the advice of people even more successful than him in this field. So excellent book. I highly recommend you read it, because there are important lessons that if you don't learn them soon, you might end up basically surviving on Social Security or minimal funds. But if you pay attention to this, you can make a lot of money and secure your financial future, so that you can also focus on all the other wonderful things that this life has to offer. So as usual, I will put a link to Amazon in the description below, so you can go purchase it from Amazon if you choose. And appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you on the next one.